This is everything that I learned from the Going Home series. The very last book, called Exploring Home, was published in 2023. It's book number 12, and it's not the last one. I learned some really cool things from this series, so I wanted to share them with you today and see what you guys thought about it. I met the author, who writes under the pseudonym of A.American. I met him at a Self-Reliance Expo back in, I want to say it was 2017. I believe that was true, 2017. And he had these books set up on the table. He actually signed this book for me. Jason, hope you enjoy the read. Chris Angery, A-N-G-E-R-Y, Angry American. His name is Chris. I follow him on some social media now. I believe he signed my second book too, if I'm not mistaken, because these were the only two that I bought from him. Yeah, there it is right there. So he signed both of those books for me. And this book is basically the story about the main character, whose name is Morgan Carter, and he finds himself, he lives in Florida, and he finds himself driving home from a business trip. I think he's like, 2 or 3 hours away from home, something like that, somewhere outside of Ocala, Florida. I actually know where that is because my grandparents lived there for a while, but it's been several years ago, so I hadn't been out there in a long time. But he's driving home one day, and his truck completely dies. And these are a few spoilers, but these won't spoil the story. I will leave links to all of this in the description below. But if you enjoy down-to-earth, post-apocalyptic novels, then this might be good for you. This is not like sci-fi. This is not like zombie apocalypse or anything like that. This is pretty down to earth for the most part. So his truck dies on the way home, and he decides that he's got a 3-day go bag, a get home bag, something which I'm actually building right now. Partially as a result of this, and partially as from a couple other videos that I've seen on YouTube. But he decides to walk home because he can't get his truck to start. None of his electronic devices will start, and the cars around him are all pulling off the side of the road and dead also. Turns out later on we learn that there was either a coronal mass injection, a CME, or an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, that basically wiped out everything in the United States. Now, I've read this entire series. I thought this was going to be a 12-book series, but this book number 12 that was written in 2023, clearly it ends in the middle of a story, so it's clearly not the last book. And the prior book to that was written in 2020, or published in 2022. So we've got one from 2022, one from 2023, so I'm expecting book 13 will be out sometime this year in 2024. Now, for the most part, I can't recall if they ever really said what caused the EMP. What caused the CME or the EMP? What caused the massive power outage? But regardless of what caused it, everything's down. So there's a lot of solar battery use throughout the story. When I bought this book from him, I was at the Self-Reliance Expo of 2017. I'm pretty sure it was 2017. I had a table set up at that expo because the director of the expo, the organizer of the expo, called me and invited me to come out and set up a table at his expo because he wanted a ham radio presence there. So one of my friends, Kevin, he did a short, 30, 45-minute presentation on how to become a ham radio operator and what the differences are. I sat at the table, and I sold a lot of technician books. I sold some Baofangs, stuff like that, just kind of like random stuff that I used to sell when I had GrapevineAmateurRadio.com when it was a store, which I don't sell radios anymore. But he had these books here, and he saw me at the table, and I went to buy his book, and I was talking to him about what I did, and he's like, oh, there's a lot of ham radio in this book. And turns out he gets connected with this military guy, and this military guy gives him Yaesu FT857 to use on his journey home, teaches him how to string up a wire antenna into a tree, and so that he can talk to people on the way home. He can listen to whatever broadcasts are out there. So speaking of antennas, today's video is sponsored by Mezzi and Poloni Coax. You can always save a 10% discount at the link in the description below with the coupon code of HR2 cables, thanks to Gigaparts. Check out Mezzi and Poloni Coax. If you're going to buy, or if you're going to build, probably not buy, if you're going to build a Go kit and include radio stuff in it, I highly recommend their airborne style of coax because it is made to be lightweight and put into a pack to go on plane, like DXpeditions, to basically put on a plane to where it's not too heavy. That's why they call it airborne. So airborne coax, it comes in 5 and 7 and I think even 10 millimeter. Airborne coax is great for field deployable ops. getting on a plane, going to a de-expedition, hiking up a mountain with a backpack with a lot of stuff in it. Very lightweight coax. You can always save 10%. HR2 cables. Check the link in the description below. Now, some of their terminology is wrong. It's obvious that he has a little bit, the author has a little bit of ham radio knowledge, but they often refer to the radio as a ham. They say, yeah, so what did you hear on the ham tonight? Or are you going to string the antenna up tonight and try to reach someone on the ham? Nobody calls it that. Nobody calls it a ham. A ham is something you eat at Thanksgiving. It's called a radio or a rig. So some of his terminology is off. And Chris, I'm sure you don't remember me, but if you ever happen upon this video and you need any pointers, just hit me up an email. I would love to. In fact, I'd love to interview you. You ever want to come onto the show and be interviewed about your series and about things? Hit me up. Put a comment below. Let me know. This is a list of several things that I learned about. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, okay? But there's a couple of things in here that, like the terminology for ham radio, calling it a ham instead of a radio, that was kind of weird. And I'm going to tell you about some items that I learned about in here. One item that I learned about in here, I use to this day. I use it a lot. I'm going to get to that here in a second. But I also wanted to talk about this latest book called Exploring Home, which again was book 12. They call it the Survivalist series. And I want to read a passage to you from this book because I found it pretty hilarious. This is from the very last book, Exploring Home. To set the premise here, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but it doesn't really give anything away. It doesn't give anything away about the story at all. So to set the backstory here, basically what they're doing is their team is out exploring and they're on their way somewhere to set up a counteroffensive with somebody, and they find a house or building with some radio towers, presumably like a Roan 25 tower or something, with some antennas on it, and they want to set up a repeater for themselves to be able to talk between their homestead and back to town. They've been by this place a couple times, and they finally stop here to investigate, and they and here's what they find inside of this place here. I'm just going to kind of start in the middle of everything here because I don't want to read the whole backstory. You guys go get this book because it's really good. All right, so fire in the hole, fire in the hole, fire in the hole. They blow the door open because this place is kind of fortified. I think it might even been like a radio station type tower. There was a pop and I looked at the second hand on my watch. Mike ducked around the corner and checked his watch 20 seconds. He counted down in 10-second intervals until there was a crashing explosion. The air was filled with smoke and dust and the smell of cordite. We walked around the corner to see the door lying on the ground in front of the building. Inside, it was pitch black, so I pointed my rifle and clicked the light on. What we saw was unimaginable. There was a large bench running across the end of the room opposite the door. A swivel chair sat in front of it with the skeletal remains of a person in and about the chair. The most disgusting thing about the scene, to me at least, was that the skull still had headphones on. Die-hard ham radio operator. Though the lower jaw had fallen off. Oh, that's disgusting, Mel said. Mel is the main character's wife. Doc looked at the remains, then at Mike. Should have saved those 2 bags. This guy is seriously dehydrated. It smells like Sarge stepped in. It smells like 2 trash cans in here. Look at all this stuff. So the room was packed with radio equipment. There were numerous radios mounted into a wood panel on the bench. Dials and gauges of several types looked out as well from the bench. There were antenna switches, power supplies, microphones, speakers, and computers. I walked over to the bench and picked up a notebook. Flipping through the pages, I was surprised to see so many notes were made about people transmitting and not using call signs. This is about 1 year after. Book 12 takes place about 1 year after the original Book 1 when the collapse happens. Now, I have a couple of key things about that I want to get to here in a minute, but I'm going to keep reading right now. Whoever this was had even gone so far as to use a directional antenna to determine the azimuth of the transmitters. Okay. He'd written down names of people he'd spoke to that didn't have a call sign. It appeared from the notes that the operator was far more concerned with the non-existent FCC rules than he was about what was happening to people. Okay. I find this to be hilarious, funny, and pretty much unrealistic because people like that, people who actually are going to be the told you so crowd, they're not going to be sitting around the radio, talking on the radio, telling people to use a call sign a year after a collapse happens. Those people might not even be alive, but we'll see. The notebook didn't contain any notes on the unfolding events, only hate-filled comments on people he talked to. I couldn't believe it as I was reading. These are his notes that he's reading, and they're all in italics in the book. Lincoln, Nebraska. Steve, wouldn't give last name. No call sign, no 73s. Near Austin, Deborah Banks, no call sign, foul language, no 73s. The book was replete with such notes. I shook my head. What's that? Sarge asked. Station log, I replied. Anything in it? No, just a sad ham, man. Sarge asked, sad ham, question mark? I looked at Sarge. Yeah, you know, those old guys on the radio that act like the RF police. When they're not talking about their radios, they're bitching and whining about other people not utilizing the airwaves in a manner they approve of. Oh, I know what you mean, Sarge said. Annoying little guys. Yeah, so then they take all the radio equipment and set it up later at their place. So, Sad Ham makes an appearance in book 12. I thought that was pretty, I mean, realistically, guys, come on. People who act like that on the airwaves are not going to even, I mean, I question whether those people would actually even survive an event like we're talking about. It's all in good fun. It's funny. I laughed at it. I bookmarked it so I could read it to you guys on the camera because I was already planning on making this video. Something else I find very unrealistic, okay, is that book 12, like I said, was a year into this collapse. So things have been going, you know, EMP shut down everything. They don't have any power. The guy, Morgan, he has a solar panel system on his house that they're utilizing. They have built water catching devices that are up on stilts so that when you open and they put a valve on it so that when you open the valve, you have water pressure to the house. So there's some really ingenious things that they do. But they're out on a trip. Shortly before this story, they're out on a trip and they're driving at nighttime because it's safer to drive at nighttime than during the day for roadblocks and people that can see you. And they're all driving with night vision goggles, which is really cool. I would love to get me some night vision goggles. I know you can't. I can't really afford the true military grade NVGs that I think they're called white phosphorus. I think there's some really high, like $10, $15, $20,000 for a pair of NVGs. There's some really good ones that I'll never be able to afford, but there's some ones that you can like get on Amazon that perhaps I might pick up one day because something is better than nothing. So we'll see about that. But they're driving along with these night vision goggles and they stop when they're going by this lake, and they stop because they see this light, this little beam of light that turns out to be somebody's flashlight. And somebody's walking around the lake with a flashlight at nighttime looking for something. And the conversation that is had by the 3 or 4 guys in the car is basically along the lines of, I wonder where he got batteries. Where do you think he got batteries for his flashlight? And they make references in a couple of books earlier about how all the car batteries are starting to die and all the batteries are dead and you can't get batteries for this anymore. This is 1 year into the collapse. 1 year. So very unrealistic, in my opinion. I have Chinese batteries that are 3 or 4 years old that still work great. I have Bioenno batteries that are 3 or 4 years old that are still working very great. Lots of Dakota lithium batteries, Bioenno batteries. I think even like the Power Queen and the Redodo batteries have like a 6 or 7 year shelf life. I know Dakota, I believe it's Dakota Lithium that has a 7-year warranty. It might not be a warranty, but they estimate it to be 7 years. Gigaparts with their batteries gives you like a 3-year warranty on the battery, 2 or 3 year. I'm getting my numbers wrong, but it's more that like we're talking about a year into this collapse and nobody has batteries because all the batteries are dead. And he even went through the thing one time in a couple of books prior to the last book, and he refreshed his battery, his car battery. He got the cells going again with some combination of like salt and some I think saline he got from somewhere. I forget exactly how he did it, but he kind of refreshed his battery because his battery had been dead and the Suburban had been dead. And I'm like, you know, if it was 10 years into the event, yeah, you'd probably start losing batteries. But 1 year? And again, his terminology on ham radio stuff a lot of times is wrong. But it doesn't take away from the story. It's still a good, fun, fictional story, and I learned a lot of stuff. Now, about the things that I got. This is called a Grilly Put, portable camping grill. And I'll put an overlay here of the place on Amazon. He was talking about it. This was in the very first book. He was walking home. I think he ended up going like 100 plus miles to get home. And it took him a couple weeks. So he was walking home, trying to avoid people being buttheads, you know, and he had to feed himself, of course. And he did a little bit of deer hunting on the way home. And he breaks this thing out one night over a campfire with his buddy Thad that he meets along the way. And he sets this up and they're like, dude, is that a grill? He goes, yeah, it goes all in here. So you take this part out, and I went and bought this, like, as soon as I read that part, I'm like, oh, I gotta have that. So you take this part out here, and you build a grill out of these splines here. They go across the top, and you'll see the picture in the Amazon link that I'll share. But yeah, it's a little totally compact little camping grill. It doesn't produce fire on its own. It's not like a propane grill. It's not like a camp stove or anything like that. It's just a grill to go over the top of an existing camping fire. But if if you've set up a ground fire, or maybe you got a BioLite stove, something like that, I picked up one of those last year. It's great to grill meat on, or grill anything really. I guess you could grill vegetables on it too if you wanted to. But yeah, that's pretty cool, and it all fits into this little case here. I put the carabiner on it myself. It fits right there, and it's just a portable grill you can take anywhere. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta have that. The other thing I learned about the first time I ever heard the name Eberlestock, or Eberlestock, however you want to say it, which is a really excellent brand of backpacks and bags. Far as I know, they're made in the USA. I believe they're made in the USA, but wherever they were made, if you go read the history of Eberlestock on their website, it says it was created by this guy. He's an ex-military guy, and he makes some of the best bags that I've ever seen. I now have five. I now have 5 different versions of Eberlestock bags. One is a hunting bag. One is my EDC bag. I got that new apprentice bag that I did a video about a while back on my Pac-Man channel, which you can see right there if you click on that. Some really, really great bags. And the first time I ever read about it was in this series of books. So some really cool stuff, some really good reads. Something else he talks about is a bunch of 2 or 3 different kinds of water filters. He talks about certain types of bottles that he uses. By book 2 or 3, I grabbed my daily journal that I keep with me everywhere, and I started just writing down names of stuff. And I'm like, there's too much information in here to just let this go. This is pretty cool stuff. Some of this stuff I've never heard of before. But he's like tested brand names and stuff, and he includes it in the book. His name is Chris Weatherman. He writes under the pseudonym of A.American or Angry American. In fact, he's on YouTube. That's his name on YouTube as well. But he's a forager. He talks about several books in this series about books about edible plants and how to do foraging with edible plants. And I'm like, that's something that I've always been interested in myself. So a very good series, very fun read. I will put a link to the series in the description below. It will be an Amazon link. You guys can go pick it up. It'll help me out with the Amazon affiliates. I'll put a link to this grill below. I'll put a link below to the several other things, including the Eberlestock bags that I have. And I'd be interested to see what you guys had to say about any of that. When I interviewed Bob, K6UDA, on one of my pre-Christmas live streams, we kind of gravitated towards prepper fiction books, and I was talking about this, and he recommended a couple of different series to me, and I've picked those up, and I haven't started to read them yet, but I'm interested to do that. I would be interested to know if there's any kind of fictional books like what I'm describing here that you've read that you would recommend to me. You won't be able to put a link in the comments below because I block links to keep all the spam bots out. But just give me the name of the series that I can find on Goodreads.com or on Amazon or something like that. I'd like to know whether the series are out there that are like this, because this was a really fun read. And when book 13 comes out, hopefully later this year, I'll be doing another review of that. 73, guys. Thanks for watching today.